Hello everyone, let me welcome you all to Jamaica 411. Let me say a special welcome to my subscribers and welcome you back. Always lovely to have you, yes, and reading your comments. So please keep the comments going, okay? Please also everyone give the video a thumbs up from now on. Please give the video a thumbs up from now on. And if you have not yet done so, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel because you know what old time people say, encouragement sweetens labor. I would also appreciate it if you would share this video. And for all of your kindness, yes, I thank you all in advance. Well, now that you're back with me, let's get down to business. So, folks, we are in the season again. Yes, gearing up for a general election, this time the parliamentary general election. And of course, as fate, good fortune, decision of the Prime Minister would have it, we are also having the election after the budget is read. So, now that we are the kings and queens and the real bosses, yes, the two sides are coming at us, whispering sweet nothings in our ears, whining and dining and putting on the charms to get a vote. So I think maybe what we'll do is give a little assessment of how well they are performing so far. Well, we had Sister Favor. Yes, Sister Favor opened the debate and she had several goodies. And then after that, we have Brother Julian, and his job is to debunk whatever Favor was whispering in our ears, yes, all those goodies, and put forward his own goodies. Yes, that's how it works. And we are going to be looking at his goodies. And being that he is in opposition, we're going to have to see whether these are just pie in the sky goodies or they're workable, if there are any funding or he proposed where the funding is coming from, and so on. And then we can, if we have the time, compare both so far and see which one we can countenance. Yes, you agree with that? All right, so let's begin. But you know, the big question is, where do we begin? Well, since it was a budget exercise, you would have been hearing a whole heap of terminology. You must say, I wonder where all them sitting them mean. Well, mutual just skip over them and get the money side of it and that's it. But I had to go and look them up myself and make sure I understand what they mean too. So I'm going to bring you now the information that was read by Favor in terms of the budget. You're going to hear terms such as recurrent expenditures. You heard her mention things about capital spending, otherwise called capital expenditure. Then there's the non-tax revenue and debt amortization. Then them talk about grants. We all know what the bauxite levy is, and we all know what tax revenue is. So we now have to first, know what they mean before we can understand what it was that she was trying to tell us, because she was using so big words, but she not have any choice, as just so it's the end of the budget. But our job here is to understand what the dickens all of that means. So we're going to begin, first of all, by looking at who should we go to then? Gleaner? Let's go to the Gleaner and see what they said, and then we will look at the definitions as we go along. What you say to that? You agree? Great. The Gleaner's lead story read, that's in the budget. I believe they're quoting from Favor herself. Finance Minister Favor Williams in opening the 2025-2026 debate on Tuesday. disclosed that 495.8 billion has been allocated from the 1.26 trillion budget announced last month towards compensation for government employees. So there you have it. So they say Williams, in her maiden budget debate presentation, said it includes, this is a 400 billion, it includes new rates of pay for medical consultants, dental surgeons, parish court judges, and probation or aftercare officers. Back pay for medical consultants and parish court judges, an allocation to support the employment of agricultural wardens. So they're going to be employing agricultural wardens, right? And for that, she's allocating 1 billion to support continuation of the Jamaican National Service Corps and a compensation contingency provision of 33 billion to meet the cost of public sector wage settlements, including a provision of 3 billion to support the filling of vacant technical positions in regional health authorities. Vacant technical positions. So there are some vacancies in the healthcare system, and she has allocated 3 billion to pay them. I hope that means that the equipment that are popped down or non-existent in the hospitals will now be repaired or replaced or purchased, and then these technical people now will take up the job. I'm assuming that this is the type of technical positions that they're talking about. They're certainly not talking about nurses, doctors, or other persons that work in the hospital and clinics. And she's also saying that that 33 billion contingency means that they are going to be doing some negotiations with the public sector workers, and she's putting that money aside as the amount of money that they anticipate that they will be settling on for the year. So the wage bill is going to be increasing by up to that amount for this year. And then she allocated $1 billion for the Jamaican National Service Corps. Not sure what that is, but it's there. And she's going to pay up the back money that are owed to the medical consultants and parish judges. And what else is she going to do? And these persons are going to be getting new wages. Apparently, their wage wasn't settled, or they had a phasing in of their payment plan. So if you're looking at it from a political perspective, the public sector workers certainly seems to be happy in terms of the wage bill. I believe she said there were claims coming in from only 11 unions, or at least a group of unions. So we're going to turn to JIS and get the details of the budget. The Gleaner was too scattershot for me, and JIS kind of sum it up nicely. So we're looking at it now as to who it is that benefit. Of course, the government workers, and there are about 120-something thousand of them, both in central as well as the public bodies, and I do believe the parish councils as well, all of that, 120,000 people employed. And they got some nice big raise last year because there was some readjustment as to their pay scale and so on. So we don't know how that is going to play out in the general election when it comes. Now, it says here, opening the 2025-26 budget debate in the House of Representatives, Mrs. Williams said the budget will be funded with 949.5 billion of tax revenues, 139.8 billion of non-tax revenues, 812 million of bauxite levy, and $5.96 billion of grants. So we hit on the first thing we need to figure out. So we know the revenue is anything at all that comes into government's coffers, and they come under various categories. So we know what the tax revenue is, but what exactly is non-tax revenue? That is revenue that is coming to the government in terms of earnings that is not coming from the tax. So what are some examples? When the government collects fines from you guys when you break the rules on the road, yes, taxi drivers and other drivers, yes, that is a revenue to the government that is not coming from taxing people, right? Income tax, corporate tax, excise duty, and all those things, those are taxation. But the non-tax revenue now are like rates. When you go in and they charge you certain fees and rates. When the judge fine a person, that's also going into the government coffers, and so on and so forth. Then the government also owns certain entities that are generating income as well, like Duns River Falls and among other things. So you understand what it means now by non-tax revenue. Yes. So non-tax revenue amounted to 103.7 billion last year. Well, the government is anticipating that it will increase to 139.8 billion. So they're anticipating to get more from the fees and the rates that they charge, and they anticipate that you lawbreakers will be breaking the law even some more, and the judges will be finding some more people, and and that is why they anticipate they'll be receiving 139.8 billion, and we wait to see if they do. Yes. Another revenue coming into government coffers to the consolidated fund is the bauxite levy. And the bauxite levy is nothing more than a tax on bauxite production that the companies pay. So that's the bauxite levy, and that is a revenue expected to bring in 812 million this year, which means it doesn't appear as though much bauxiting going on at all. You like that? Bauxiting? Yes. Not much mining in bauxite. Next, we have another form of revenue which the government relies on, and that's grant money. Now, they say here that grant money is not really free, but let me not confuse you as they try to confuse me. Let me read where you see I have in red. It says, unlike a loan, income from a grant is not repayable. So any money that is given to the government, which is usually from another government or from the World Bank or one of those institutions, they have these grant monies. But the grant money is not for you to just take and do what you want with it. The government can't take the grant money and build road or use it to do anything about the hospitals. No, it has to go into whatever it is that the donors, I suppose, said that it should go into. So the government of a country may want to assist some other countries with, say, pipe water, right? And so they may have a grant of X amount in that, let's call it a portfolio. I'm sure that's not what it is called. But let us say they decide that they want to donate $100 million to that cause. Various countries from around the world having water project. Once you decide that, okay, we have a water project going to cost $5 million to pipe water into, like, for example, Kingston to ease the water shortage, then they would apply for the grant money. But the government anticipates that it will be receiving the equivalent of $5,960,000,000 in grants. We don't know what they're going to do with that, but it will be interesting to know, and we'll have to go to the budget. Maybe I have to go get that long document, The line item here is just a summary, So we could peep. What do you think? You think we can do that one of these days and go see what it is that the government really have planned for us, because they only told us a little bit of it, not all of it, right? Good. So those are the revenues, and there's one more called the capital revenue. Let's see what that is. So according to this, capital revenues are the income generated from the sale of long-term assets, contributing to funding future investments. So what exactly are long-term assets? Well, there's an example at the bulleted point. Second one, it says examples include the proceeds from selling property. So when the government owns a property and divests it, right? For example, like when they sold Air Jamaica and when they sold JPS, that's a divestment program, a part of the divestment program. The revenue that the government collected from the sale, that is called capital revenue, right? It also may sell equipment and investments. What investments we're talking about? Wigton Farm was an investment that the government owned, and it sold those shares. When it sold the shares to you guys and you bought them, the money that the government received, that $11 billion, that now became capital revenue, because the capital is referring to assets, right? Whether it be property, equipment, or some company that it has, that it is selling, that is what is known as capital. And the revenue that the government gets from the sale is a capital revenue. And last year, the government had received or budgeted to receive 14.5 billion in capital revenue. But this year, we are not seeing any figure for it. So the government has 5 revenue streams. You have, first of all, the tax revenue, which would be everything they call tax, and some things they call levy, some things they call duty. Those are tax revenue. So too are taxes on income, such as PAYE, and so on and so forth. Yes. And then you have the non-tax revenue, such as fines, and when the government offers services, they may charge you a fee or rate. And then there are the monies that they earn, yes, from traffic tickets and fines that are paid in the court. Bauxite levy is a tax on the production of bauxite. The grants are free money that they get from whoever is giving them, usually a government or one of those, World Bank or IDB and so on. And then you have the capital revenue, which is when the government sell any of the assets. For example, they were selling a company, maybe a car or any kind of equipment and so on. That is what is called capital revenue when they get the money from that. So you understand that now. Great. So the next thing that we need to do now that we understand government revenue and what it is all about, we now need to understand their expenditures. And the first of these expenditures we hear about is the recurrent expenditures. So the recurrent expenditure refers to regular ongoing costs incurred by a government or organization for the day-to-day operations and maintenance of services, excluding capital investments. And we soon come to that. Right? So we know what capital revenue is. We soon discover what capital investments and capital expenditures are. So what is recurrent expenditure, right? It is the money that the government requires to do certain things every day, right? It keeps recurring every year. It's not a one-off expense like fixing a road. It's one-off. No. Every year the government has to find money, find revenue in order to pay these particular costs, or what some people generally call expenses. So what are some of the costs to government? Some expenses that it has to be paying every year. Well, wages and salaries. So that's a recurring expenditure. Every year they have to be paying their workers and of course themselves. So the payment of wages and salaries of government employees, that comes under the category of recurrent expenditure. Next, you have operational costs, the expenses to run the government. And you're talking about the light bill and the water bill. They have to be paying for stationery for staff. Anything at all that is not wages and salaries, that has to do with the functioning of government, the operations of government, that they have to pay every year, that also comes under recurrent expenditure. Then now there's the business of maintenance, costs to upkeep and repair of infrastructure and equipment. Infrastructure will be like your roads and your bridges and so on. So whatever maintenance that the government pays for the gully and the gully cleaning and repairs, yes, that is a recurrent expenditure. Every year they have to clean the gullies. Every year they have to fix roads. And I suppose the bridges will come under that as well. So the maintenance of these infrastructure falls under recurrent expenditure. Then there's the business of interest on debt. Since we have the debt that is owed over a period of time, every year we have to pay down that debt, or pay the debt as it falls due, meaning that, this year it might become due to pay some debt, you have to pay it. That also falls under recurrent expenditure because it is something that we do every year. Follow? Yes. So the next expenditure is what is called capital expenditure. You might see it referred to as capital spending. And in a nutshell, what is it? Capital expenditure, on the other hand, involves investments in long-term assets, such as infrastructure projects. And what are those? Roads, buildings, etc. So it is the capital expenditure that the people in Westmoreland Eastern, in Porus, that would be South Manchester, and in South St. James, yes, when we went on our tour, them no seem to think anything is the matter with the economy. Them certainly not complaining about the cost of living, but they were complaining about the roads. So folks, I know you're listening because you tell me that you listen to it, me, Karen, and Natalie. So the plan by the government to finance the capital expenditure, do some capital spending, this is what you want to know now. We want to know how much is in that budget. The government has capital expenditure every year. Every year. And every government, right? They're either going to be building roads or they're going to be repairing roads. So whenever you hear the opposition saying, these risers in the opposition saying that PJ said it too. PJ said that the government did away with the road maintenance fund. And they're making a big deal out of that, saying that that is a reason why the roads are not repaired. No. No, 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 no. Roads are not repaired because the roads are just not repaired. You have the capital expenditure, and that is where the money comes from. So if the government intends to, they say 20 roads or 40 roads and say, okay, we're going to fix it and it's going to cost us 8 billion, then they allocate that money under the capital expenditure heading, right? And it will state what it is for. So you don't have to have a dedicated fund to deal with road maintenance. You understand? Because the capital expenditure is a heading under which it falls. See what I'm saying? Yes, it's all, it's politics, and they have to score points and make you believe that there is something going on when the government did away with the road maintenance fund, as if to say that somehow the government can repair roads without that fund. No, foolishness. Good. So now you understand what that capital expenditure is all about. It is the government that is investing in long-term assets. Long-term assets. So we are talking about the roads and the buildings and anything that the government intends to keep over a long period of time. That's what is known as a long-term asset. You will sometimes hear them refer to capital expenditure as CapEx. CapEx. So when you hear them again talking about CapEx, it is a capital expenditure. And for further clarity, it says that it is a fund that is used for acquiring, upgrading, and maintaining physical assets like buildings, infrastructure, and equipment. So, for example, I would imagine that the hospital equipments, like the MRI and so on, those would have been considered assets. At least it seems so to me. But buildings for certain, and the infrastructure, is the roads, bridges, and so on. So, acquiring, that's buying. So, if they buy equipment, right, they upgrade an equipment. Like, for example, when they had the Wigton farm, they had upgraded the Wigton farm. And as for the maintenance of the Wigton farm, it would be like keeping those windmills in good repair. Yes. So it goes on to say, it doesn't finish there. It says that the fund that is used to acquire, upgrade, maintain these physical assets like the buildings and the roads and so on, they are used for revenue generation over a longer period. The government is going to build a road a certain place. They expect investments to take place in that area, and investments in any area where the road is running would mean more money coming into the government coffers. So the purpose of the capital expenditure is the government is looking forward to income coming in as a result of what it spent. You follow? Yes. I'm telling you all of this for a reason. So please be patient. Be patient with me, man. Be patient. I'm telling you all of it for a reason. Yes. Now, the final of the government's expenditure is perhaps the most, or at least it seems that it will be the most difficult to understand because the words are big. Debt amortization. Well, the word might be big, but I don't know why they not just call it what it is, which is you pay off your debt. So amortization, whenever you hear that word, has to do with debt. So let's read what it says. It says debt amortization refers to the gradual reduction of a debt through scheduled payments that include both principal and interest. The gradual reduction of a debt through scheduled payments, meaning that you're paying at a certain time, right? A specific time, that include both the principal and interest. So what are they saying? So you see, when you decide to save up a little money and you're ready to buy a house, and because you're tired of paying rent and all them things there, and you go in at the bank or you go NHT or Jamaica National and you borrow money, they are going to tell you that they're going to be lending you this money and you're going to pay X amount of money. Like, for argument's sake, they might say you need to pay like maybe $40,000 a month for, say, 20 years. Every month you're going to be paying part of the principal and the interest on it. And whenever you pay, you reduce the amount of money that you owe. That is what is known as amortization. But every year they have to pay on the debt. And so the debt amortization is basically saying that the government has to pay some money this year, and the total amount of the debt, principal, and interest that they must pay is X amount. And for this year, we are supposed to pay $167.7 billion. Last year, we paid $317 billion. So this is almost half the amount we're paying this year. And what the government says, it's going to borrow $158.4 billion. And when we pay the taxes, they're going to pay the difference of $9.3 billion out of that. And I'm sure when they borrow the money again, they'll be getting at much less interest. And that's a smart thing to do, because if they were to take this $167 billion and pay it, then we would have less money to spend. So somebody go and lend with money, take it. And then take the $167 billion and go do something else with it. Makes sense, right? And then you hope that investments will come in and the government will get revenue now to take care of the future payments. Right. So this is the last of the government expenditures, and there are three categories of them. First, you have the recurrent expenditure, and these are the costs and expenses that the government pays every year. Every year it has to pay them, like the salaries and wages and expenses that it incurs in its operation. Then you have the capital expenditure, which is what the government spends on infrastructure, buildings, and so on, in order and hopefully that it would make a return when investments begin to flow. Yes, those are the capital expenditure, otherwise called CapEx. And then, as a different type of expenditure now, is a debt amortization or repayment of the debt that it owes to other people. Yes. So, these are the expenditures. Now, I promise you, I am giving you all of this for a reason, and I'm going to get into that reason now. Now, I need you to pay particular attention to what I'm about to say now. You see, all of what the government collect and put in the consolidated fund that central government uses to allocate, all of the taxes that the government receives from GCT, PAYE, corporation tax, and all the various taxes, yes, and the service fees that they charge for providing service to you, the fines, the revenue from investments, and the bauxite levy, all of that money goes into the consolidated fund to be allocated, and that is what the budget is about. And for this year, the government is projecting that it will spend $1.26 trillion. Now, this is what it will spend. And so what Minister Favour Williams was telling us was where the money was going to come from to finance this $1.2 trillion. You get it? Now, where did she say the money going to come from? So the first question is, what will she be spending this $1.26 trillion on? The biggest item that the government will be spending taxes on would be recurrent expenditure, which according to the GIS includes wages and salaries for the various ministries, departments, and agencies. It would also include any other expenses that the government has that it pays every year. That's a recurrent expenditure. The second expenditure, which makes up the budget, is the capital expenditure. Remember what that is? Yes, that's what going to fix the roads and the bridges and do all sorts of repairs to building and other infrastructure of the government. That is what the people want to know about. They want to know how them road thing will go. Well, there are $62.6 billion in the capital budget for upgrading and maintaining the buildings, roads, other infrastructure and equipment that the government owns. So when you total the recurrent expenditure and the capital expenditure, the total is $1.26 trillion. So now Sister Fable knows how much she needs to pay her government workers. So now she must figure out now where is that money coming from. So where is she going to get that $1.26 trillion from? Based upon the current levels of taxation, without increasing taxes in anything at all. For instance, there is no increase in the GCT. The GCT is still 15%. PAY is the same. Corporate tax is the same. Based upon the level of taxation that they expect and the growth in the economy that they anticipate, the revenues that they will generate would be $949.5 billion. And that is where the Minister of Finance says that she will be getting the bulk of her money to finance the budget from tax revenue. So she now has $310.5 billion to close the gap. She needs to find that money. So where is she going to get it from? Well, they're anticipating that they will receive $139.8 billion from service fees for the service they provide, and they charge fees, as well as revenue from investments, not to mention you lawbreakers. Yes, when we broke the law, we pay on a fine for breaching the road code, among other things. And the courts, I suppose, are expected to be busy too with another set of lawbreakers. Yes, so they anticipate that they are going to be receiving $139.8 billion this year from we unruly people and from the fees that they charge and rates for services that they provide. Right. So, anything else? Yes. There is the bauxite levy, and the government is projecting that they'll receive $812 million from the production of bauxite this year. And finally, we have grants, which amounts to $5.96 billion. So what's the grand total? $1,096,000,000,000. That's a total. Now that means that the minister is still short. When you minus 1.26 from 1,096,000,000,000, you find that she's 163.6 billion short. So where is that money coming from? From the loan receipts. Remember that she has the debt amortization. Yes, that is considered a recurrent expense. So the 1.197 trillion in recurrent expense would have included the debt repayment. And remember, she's going to get a loan receipt of $158.4 billion. So when it comes to the debt payment and the loan receipt, there is a 9.3 billion, and Sister Favor said that that would come from our own revenue. Well, since that revenue does not fall under any other category, the only place it could come from is from surplus. And remember, she said that there will be a small surplus. Yes, she did say that. So when you add up now the loan receipts of 158.4 billion with the total of the revenue, which is a little over $1 trillion, and the surplus, what you get is total revenue of 1.26 trillion. So we books balance. Now, I took all the time, and I know you're patient with me to tell you all of this for a reason. Because as you can see, the money that is coming in, that $1.26 trillion is spoken for. Every single dollar of it. $1.197 trillion is for public sector workers and the government expenses that it incurs throughout the year. That's a recurrent expenditure. And then you have the capital expenditure, which is 62 billion. And then you have the non-tax revenue. That is what make up the government revenue. There is no more money to do anything else unless you're going to raise taxes. If you don't intend to raise taxes, then the other option is to use the capital spending, the capital expenditure, which is supposed to go for roads and the maintenance of the infrastructure and construction of infrastructure. That is what the capital budget is for. So you have $62 billion, that's a room that they can use. They can cut back on that. Otherwise, if they're going to shift up the budget, then they will be cutting back on government workers, laying them off in order to save some money. Right? Where else could they get the money from? You cannot be establishing or imposing a recurrent expenditure on government without having a fixed source of income for it. So you cannot rely on the non-tax revenue, because the people might just decide to behave themselves, and then your revenue drop short, as may well be the case this year as well. So what Fable told you that she was going to do is coming out of this budget. Hear me good. When she come whispering in your ears and telling you what she's going to do is coming out of the budget. What Julian was proposing, all of what he proposed, to the extent that it is outside of what is being programmed for now, then that is going to require additional taxes. No, he never said so, and he never tell you where the money going to come from, for a reason. He needs to compete. He needs to get the girl. Yeah, he need to get the votes. Can't blame him. Just try a thing is for us now to inform you and let you understand what is going on, right? To the extent that they mean what they say, that they're going to do all these things, including the $1 billion for content creators. For what reason? I don't know. I am a content creator, and I don't know what I would want that money for. So that money is going to have to come from somewhere, and it has to be programmed for, because it will be a recurrent expenditure. So Brother Julian needs to be asked where the money is going to come from for what it was that he proposed. He must have something in mind. Is he going to be cutting government expenditure, meaning that you're going to be cutting staff, cutting programs to make room? Are you going to be cutting the capital expenditure to make room for your new programs? Where is that money going to come from? That's the first thing. But before you even get to where the money coming from, the first question, well, that is the second question, is how much will it all cost us as taxpayers? Because if the people of this country is stupid enough to take that Englishman and put in a Jamaica house, him and Bunting and Dayton Campbell and Angela Brownberg, right? Then the question is now, where will they get the money from in order to finance the promise that they are making? Because we're going to take you at your word. Ununa say una have integrity. Well, Julian, we know say you're a good boy. But we are talking about the Englishman who put you up to come out there, come say those things. So we need to know the cost. What's the cost of the programs that you're coming with? And I am sure, because you tell us that the Englishman will come with other things too. So we want the Englishman to tell us what it's going to cost. And remember, it's a beauty contest, you know. And remember, you want with support. So if somebody else will tell with something, and you will tell with something, but your thing now hold no water, then we can't give you no chance. So we need that information. So this is how I sum up both presentations. Favor is saying one thing, but it is coming out of revenue, and she has shown where the revenue is coming from. We need to know from Julian and the Englishman where the money is going to come from to finance the programs that they say is good for us. For example, we know how many children we have in our schools, and therefore how many children will be getting this 1 meal a day you promised. So you can tell us how much it's going to cost us and where the money is going to come from. And if you're going to say the money will come from the growth in the economy, then it means that you won't be able to implement at the same time, because it's going to take a while to get the growth. Therefore, at what point do you intend to introduce this school feeding program? So we're going to give you a little chance. We're not going to rough you up. We'll give you a little chance and wait till when we hear from the Englishman and see if he comes with more specifics in terms of costs. Because if you're talking about budget, then you proposing something, then that something has a cost, free. And you must know what that is. And if you don't know what that is, then what does that say about you? Folks, I'm going to leave it here today. I hope you find this interesting. And my goodness, I took a long time to get to the point, and I hope you were patient with me and stay until the end. I also want to thank you for sharing, liking, subscribing, and leaving your comments in the comment section. So until next time, take very good care of yourselves and walk good.